I did accidentally get caught up in the tail end of some riots in France.
How do you make friends?
You meet a whole other solo travelling community out there that's doing the same thing you are. For me, the challenge is trying to keep the spontaneity and just making sure you're not, I guess, projecting an aura of vulnerability. Always try and have a map in your mind of where you want to go.
Do you have any regrets?
I must admit, I do regret.
What's your name?
My name is Lisa, last name Ferris.
And where is home for you?
So I'm originally from New Zealand, a little town in the North Island called Gisborne.
You recently went on a trip. Can you tell me a bit about that?
I did. I needed a break after New Year's, so I took a flight to Miami and went on a cruise for the first time.
How did you find that?
I found it absolutely wonderful. One of the best trips I have been on, and I think it pushed me out of my comfort zone. I've never done anything like that before, and I must admit I was anti-cruising, I have to say. I did have a bias against it, but it was honestly one of the most interesting experiences that I've had traveling.
When did you first travel on your own?
I've been traveling solo for quite a while, probably at last 20 or so years, taking solo trips. And I think it's because I just enjoy the challenge of getting out there, pushing your boundaries, pushing your comfort zones, and meeting new people. It's really, really awesome.
How did people around you take it when you first started traveling on your own?
I mean, obviously, friends and family were a little concerned, especially when you're quite younger and traveling by yourself. But I think as long as you've got like a good head on your shoulders and have a bit of street smarts about you, like the world is your oyster. It's just amazing what you can do. And I have to say, you're not beholden to everyone else's travel plans. You can set your own destiny and travel where you like or stop where you like, which I really, really enjoy.
What's your planning process like?
I can get quite anally retentive in terms of how I program my visits. And so for me, the challenge is trying to keep the spontaneity as part of the travel planning. So I do, like for this trip that I just went on, this cruise, I basically Googled where in the world is warm at the moment because I was so cold in London, and it came up with a few options, and it was either North Africa or the Caribbean. And I went, you know what? I've never been to the Caribbean before, and I'm going to try it.
What's the best thing about traveling on your own?
Ooh, I think, as I said before, being able to set your own itinerary, being able to pivot when you want to pivot, being able to change things up if you want to change things up, and to not feel the sort of, I don't know, quasi guilt that goes along with traveling in a group where you have to sort of conform to what the majority of the group wants to do. You can really explore your own interests. And I think that even though some people have concerns that, oh, it might be lonely or, you're by yourself, to be honest, I've actually found that doesn't happen.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's really interesting. And just to take the example, the Caribbean cruise I just went on, I think as a woman, you're traveling alone as well. You're probably like less threatening, I guess, for people to come up to and talk to, but also you meet a whole other solo traveling community out there that's doing the same thing you are. And so you can engage as much as you like and connect with like-minded people. Or if you want to do your own thing and sit by yourself and read a book, while you're traveling, then that's fine too. So it just gives you that real flexibility that you wouldn't have if you're traveling in a group.
How do you keep yourself safe when you travel?
I think it's about one, researching, where you're going to, and obviously checking out recommendations and concerns around the areas that you go to, and just being a bit smart about your personal safety, both for your personal effects and obviously yourself as well. It's things like keeping to sort of populated areas where you've got others around you, and just making sure you're not, I guess, projecting an aura of vulnerability. For me, it's like always try and have a map in your mind of where you want to go. Never look lost. Always look like you're going with purpose. And I guess just projecting an aura of, sort of confidence really, really helps.
How do you make friends?
I think a variety of different ways. The cruise line was really good. So I did the Virgin Voyages cruise out of Miami. And they actually had a really quite a good process where they got all the solo travelers together as an introductory meet, and then they booked us for morning teas and dinners as a solo group. So you could just go along and introduce yourself there and then. If I'm traveling solo without sort of a cruise, or just going point to point, I actually found, having dinner at a bar or pub, people actually naturally will come up to you and say hello. I haven't really found it difficult. Also, do things like walking or running tours in countries is a really good way of connecting up with people, and just doing little localized events and things like that.
Is running one of your hobbies?
I wouldn't say at my age it's a necessity now just to keep fit. But I do enjoy running. I enjoy getting out there and seeing things, whether it be running or cycling, or walking. And I found it really good from a travel point of view. Most cities and that will have kind of running and walking tours of areas, or even cycling tours. And so that's a really good way of networking and meeting people.
Have you faced any difficulties on your travels?
Once, this is going back a few years now, I did accidentally get caught up in the tail end of some riots in France. So that was quite disconcerting for a young traveller. I was in Marseille when a leader called Le Pen was trying for the presidency, and so there were some riots in Marseille, and I must admit I naively thought I could just wander around. But again, the locals do take quite good care of you, and the person that I was at the hostel that I was staying in, it was quite good and cautioned me and said, just make sure you take care of yourself. If this happens, if there is going to be riots here today, then just keep yourself safe. And so I ended up going into the university where they had an art gallery and just sort of tucked myself away from the riots, which was quite good because they set things on fire and things like that, which was dangerous. And then went to an Irish pub on the port there, which again was a lovely, safe place, and met a couple of friends just at the Irish pub. And yeah, they took good care of me. They were locals and got me to my hostel safely.
How do you deal with the language barrier?
Like many places in the world, so New Zealand's quite a monolingual nation, so English is my first language, and I'm not great with other languages, but I think I try and ensure that I speak at least rudimentary hello, directions, asking politely for things. It's part and parcel of the preparation for any travel. The invention of Google Translate has been wondrous in that regard, and I find, for the most part, as long as you try in a language, they're quite receptive. People of the local countries are quite receptive, and if not, sign language and charades can help wonders along the way.
Do you have any regrets of something you had done or hadn't done on your travels?
Regrets. I was in Turkey at Istanbul, and I must admit I do regret not pushing forward and going to Gallipoli, which is quite a place of historic significance for New Zealand. And my great granduncle is actually buried there in Gallipoli from World War One, and I really regret not taking the opportunity, just not taking the opportunity to push forward and go to Gallipoli, even though it would have been quite a long and stressful day. I just I didn't think I had the time to do it, and I really regret not taking the opportunity. And I will actually go back. It's on my bucket list to do. I think the other thing that I was challenged by, and it's things like in Thailand, I did go and see some of the elephants at an animal park, and it wasn't until later on that I actually did some research and was like, well, I should have checked out a bit better about wildlife tourism and really awful things they do to animals. And that's a thing that's now in my consciousness, and I'm really careful about going and doing things that have a wildlife component to them, just in terms of treatment of animals and exploitation and things like that. I'm much more aware of that now than perhaps I was when I was younger and traveling.
Have your social media habits changed, or do they change when you travel?
I think from a security point of view, I usually only post things after I've come back, and that's just really, my social media is pretty closed down anyway, but I find that I usually let people know things post event, I think, just from a safety point of view. So I don't live stream or do anything like that, and usually just keep it as a snapshot of my travels for my family and friends rather than sort of do any out there advertising.
Have you learned anything about yourself?
Uh, I've learned that I'm a fairly resilient person, and I've learned that even though I think I consider myself quite extroverted and engaged, I actually like to balance that with downtime. So I think solo travel has taught me it's okay to engage and be a part of a group and get out there, but it's also perfectly okay to be by yourself with a book and to sit there and just have some quiet time. And that's, I think, what makes us human, right? It's a mix of all things.
Did that change over time?
I think
Or have you always been like that?
I think the older you've got, the more comfortable you are in your own skin, the less you need, the validation of others in order to be fulfilled and be happy and be comfortable in your own skin. So yeah, I guess it's just being confident and comfortable with who you are.
What does a typical day look like for you when you travel, or does it change?
It depends. Well, the cruise was pretty regulated because there was a nice itinerary. But for me, it's, I think, plan on where you are going to go. And I like to, again, this is, I guess, how I've evolved over travel. What is the weather like? Where will the day take you? What interests you? And sometimes you've got to pivot with that. I think my next solo trip will likely be Germany because I want to see the Disney castle when I haven't seen it. But then friends of mine who are German have said, no, that's not all Germany. Come north. And so I might pivot and go north rather than south. So I think it's just, there's no real set format for me.
Do you have a dream destination?
Ooh, I don't know. I think there's so many wonderful places in the world. It's really hard to prioritize one over the other. I love the old cities. I love things with history. So anywhere in Italy was, fantastic. France, further east. I tell you what did surprise me as a destination though, and I will be going back to, was Poland. I had an expectation or a bias in my head that Poland was very Eastern European, very Soviet era in its outlook, and Warsaw was a modern, buzzing, vibrant city, which was amazing, and I want to go back there and experience that more. And Krakow was like an old, beautiful city that sort of reminded me of the old East, European capitals. So I think it's having your expectations shifted. So that's opened me to more destinations, I think, that will be on my bucket list.
What advice would you give to someone thinking of solo traveling?
I think get out there and do it. Like, I think this is it. Like, if you're in your comfort zone and you want to try something different, then the world's the oyster. It's there for the taking. And if you are uncertain, doing things like the cruise I did, which was with Virgin Voyages, is a nice little soft landing into solo travel, I guess, if you don't want to do a point-to-point or completely independent trip.
Are there any final thoughts you would like to say that I might not have covered?
Oh, I guess, yeah, don't let sort of a fear hold you back. I think solo travel is one of the best ways to see the world, and you make lots of friends. And I think with technology now, you can leverage that to make it such an enjoyable experience, and it doesn't have to be a lonely experience. And yeah, I look forward to doing much more of it, and I hope that others will too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Cheers.